Hi guys, I'm so happy you're here. Thank you for joining me today. I know it's been a long time since I've uploaded any paper flowers. This is Krista from Mosaic Party and Event Design, and today I have some blooms by Mosaic for you. We're going to show you how to make my coffee filter carnations. Yes guys, these are made out of coffee filters. So if you like and subscribe and follow me, you'll know that I use coffee filters for most of my paper flower projects. I will talk a little bit about the coloring and show you quick techniques on how to color and texture these. You'll also be able to find some tutorials in my playlists for Blooms by Mosaic on how to color your coffee filters and how to do that to make sure that the color is locked in and stays well without fading. I'll also try and put a link up in the eye right here for some tips and tricks when it comes to coloring. Okay, these are super easy, guys. Anybody can make these and they don't take long. They make for great filler flowers in your arrangements and bouquets, or even just a little single stem with a bow on it is a nice little gift for somebody. So let's get started. I'll just set these aside. I am going to apologize for the lighting today because it's all over the board. I am very well lit here on my station, but this storm system moving past my window is really causing havoc. So it is what it is. Okay, first things first, supplies. Let's talk about the coffee filters. You will need basket coffee filters, which are a little bit more thinner and translucent compared to a cone coffee filter. I don't think I have a sample here of a cone coffee filter other than a pre-colored one that I'm going to use for leaves. That would be a cone one, and they're usually thicker. So we're going to use the basket ones, and we want a small basket one. You can get a larger size, but you're going to have a lot of waste, and your carnations will be way too big. So I get these at the local Dollarama here in Canada. I get 100 of them for $1.25. So very economical. These are a 4-cup basket coffee filter. You will need some snippy snips, otherwise known as scissors. And I'm really sad, guys. I lost my favorite pair of titanium scissors. It's always the expensive ones we lose, right? You will also need some floral tape. Now, my only suggestion here, it's not necessary, but try and match your floral tape to the color set that you're going to use on your leaves. So you can see here I have a light green leaf. I matched it as best as I could. And you can go in and color your stems and stuff a little bit later with paint or dye. But I pre-colored my paper for my leaves. And you can see I tried to match it up as best as I could. That just takes practice, so don't stress about it. It still will look good no matter what. You will also need some glue. I'm just using some tacky glue. You won't need a lot of glue, so I suggest a little dish that you can contain it on and a paintbrush to keep your fingers from getting super sticky like me. Because it doesn't matter what I use, I always end up using my hands. You will also need some floral wire. So you can use a 20 gauge. I believe I'm using an actual, a little bit thicker of a gauge today. It's an 18 gauge. It's fairly close. Again, I picked these up at a local dollar store. So a very economical priced project to do carnations if you're looking for a gift or fillers. And for your wire, oh, I'm sorry about the bouncing camera, guys. I just knocked it. For your wire, I'm going to be suggesting you put a bend in it halfway down, sorry, 3/4 of the way down, just to give you a little more stability and thickness, and you may find pliers handy for that. You will also need some water and some food coloring. So to make this sort of reddish pinky burgundy color, guys, I have used a gel food coloring in Wilton's brand for red. This is red, and put just the smallest touch of burgundy in there. You want to be careful when you're using dark colors like burgundies or anything with blue tones in it. It can overpower very, very quickly. So you need just the smallest amount. So I will put a link up in the eye here if I already haven't, and showing you how I color and mix my colors with some glue to make the color last in the paper. But you'll need probably about, for this project, you'll probably need about 1/4 of a teaspoon of color total, and then just to thin that down with water. And we'll talk about that in just a moment. What else will we need? I think that's it. So let's just get situated here and we'll talk coloring and how many coffee filters you will need and all the good stuff. So, coffee filters. You will need a total of 6 of them for 1 flower. Okay, so 6 coffee filters. And I like to break them up into 2s or 3s. We'll do 3 for the sake of the video. And how you're going to prep them for cutting and coloring is you're going to take the whole stack and fold it in half. Half again. I have a kink here, sorry guys. And half again. So, like I said, really easy. There's no real tips or tricks in how to fold these ones. So we're just going to do that again. Fold your paper in half, and half again. So for those of you not using coffee filters, you can do this with a thin paper too, as well, such as tissue or whatever you have it. And it doesn't have to be a full circle shape. You can just use a square and fold them the same way. Okay. So we're going to take our scissors. I still have a kink in this one. You just want to make sure you get any of those out and fold it as best you can. Okay, so to cut this is going to turn into 8 petals. So we're going to cut a petal shape, but with carnations, they have this shape like this, kind of like the top of a drawn diamond shape, right? And then we're going to just cut down. We need to cut a petal into it. So where that fold is, you're just going to cut down a little bit, about 1/4 to 1/2 inch. And you're going to do that on this side too. And what that's going to do is give us sort of an individual petal. I'll show you when we open it up. Okay. So with carnations, they have all these little ridges and frills, and we're going to cut those in. And this is how I generally do it. I usually cut a V into the top, a V into one of the sides, sort of that diamond top shape side. I'll flip it over because I'm cut on this side easier. And a V into there. They don't have to be perfect. Okay, just general. And then I just add some little wiggles and shape to the top, just to give it a little dimension. You can cut other little V's and you'll be left with something like this. Okay, so I'm just going to quickly do the other one and then I'll open these up and you can see. I do have my surface protected for when we get to the coloring. Parchment paper or wax paper works really well for that. So we're going to cut our diamond shape. And I really mean it when I say don't fuss, guys. It's not going to show when you try and cut them perfectly. We're going to cut our little petal separators there. And then our V in the middle. or a V in a side. Just pull out all those little soldiers that like to cling along. Right, and then I'm just going to create my little extra wiggles and indentations. All right, so you can see they're not the same. They're just a general gist, but they'll work very well together. And that's why I like to separate them into 2s and 3s instead of cutting all of them at once, because you want them all a little bit different. So when you open them up, you have an 8-petal shaped flower. And this is why I cut down the sides. This is very, very important for these flowers. This is why I cut down the sides a little bit here, guys, is it gives us that separation in between each. You can go back in and cut them a little bit after if it didn't work. And see, this one's just a little bit different, and that's okay. So now what we're going to do is we're going to take each one individually, and you're going to just kind of generally put it back into the same shape. And you're going to scrunch, twist. You're not going to make the top too tight because you don't want to break off the tips. And you don't need to worry about the bottom so much. We're just adding a little bit of texture in here, and I'll show you why in a moment with some finished colored paper. So you go through all 6. If I was smart, I probably would have had some of these pre-done. But that's okay. You can always skip ahead by double tapping on your screen, and it skips ahead the video by 10 seconds. Or 20 seconds if that's what you have it set for. But it's handy for little things like this when we're wasting time twisting. Okay, so you have your petals all twisted. And this is how we're going to color them. And what you're going to get when you color them is something like this. So you get all that texture in it, almost a crepe, but it's coffee filter. And it really lends well to a carnation texturing. So these, I'm going to show you how to do this. This is a 2-toned. I've actually used the white of the coffee filter and then just tipped them in that little bit of red, and that's what I'm going to show you today. And then I'll take that process and show you how to make the 2-tone paper. So here's another example of where I tipped them in the red and then I colored the rest in sort of this peachy color. So I'll show you how to do that as well. Okay, so coloring. This is where we make a mess. I'm actually just going to get a dish. Sorry about that, guys. I do have protector on this, but I don't want to ruin the papers that I'm going to be working with that are already done. Okay, so I have a bowl here of pre-mixed color. So you can see it's quite watery. I have about 1/4 teaspoon of color in there. And again, that is the red and a touch of the burgundy. And all you're going to do, I should be wearing gloves for this. See, I'm already getting it on there. Okay, all you're going to do is touch the tip in, and it will soak up fast. So don't dip it too deep and don't dip it too long. You can always go back and add a little bit if you notice some of the tips are not getting the color. And you just set it aside. I didn't think this out. The noise. So I'm just going to tip all of those. And then you're going to let them dry somewhat before you open them. It just helps lock in a little bit of the crinkling that you want, and it keeps you from getting your fingers too messy or your station too messy. What you'll end up with when you open them is this. We're getting a glare from some lighting. Okay. So in order to make them a two-toned color, you're going to leave them like this. That would be an example of a two-toned color. And you're going to take another color. And I think I just need to stir this up and add a little bit of water. Because it's sitting since yesterday, so the water starts to evaporate and it gets a little bit concentrated. So if you're letting your colors sit, just know that. Okay. So to make the two-tone color, all you're going to do is dip the other end and let it soak up. You can use your fingers to squish it in and twist it out and blend it. Okay. So I'll just show you. I dipped it in the end. You can see it's still white there, but once I start really working the dye down with my fingers, this is why you should probably wear gloves. And you can always go back in and pick up a little bit more. But just twist and squeeze out the excess. And then what you guys are going to end up with is this. Now this is wet. I would leave it to dry for about 10 minutes before opening it up normally, because you want it to crepe up and get that texturing in it. And when you open it up, when it's too wet, it kind of lets that out. And it's also harder to open up and more delicate when it's too wet. Once it dries a bit, you'll understand. And then you end up with this two-toned flower. So it's as easy as that, guys. Honestly. I'm just going to quickly wipe my hands. And just to show you, my hands, you can't really see on the camera as much as in real life, but they are now colored orange and pink. So just be forewarned, you may want to use gloves. So we have our paper already done, because you'll have to let those other ones dry probably for a couple hours before they're usable. I have also pre-colored some cone filter paper, which I showed you earlier. Anytime I'm making leaves or greens, I always have extra paper or extra scraps of the leaves and greens. And the scraps are really good to make the leaves for this carnation. So I didn't have any scraps today, so I pre-colored this, but this is all we're making. So I'll show you how to do those. Actually, I'll just show you out of a scrap instead of folding up the whole thing. So you're just going to take a scrap of paper. What I love about the cone coffee filters is they're double layered. And all you're going to do is cut a tiny little leaf shape. And these do not have to be perfect. And they do need to be small. Now these ones I've cut a little bit bigger, but I quite often go in and cut them down a little bit. But you can see, it's just to add this little leaf onto here. We're then going to take some glue, which I forgot to keep hanging upside down. What I mean by that is I always put my glue upside down in a little cup so that it's ready to pour. We're going to take our brush, but I have to rinse it off because I had color on it. Okay. So you're going to end up, you need 2 sets of leaves for 1 carnation. So that means you get, when you cut 2 petals or 2 leaves, you get 4 total. And all I'm going to do is fully glue one side using my brush and just holding it with the tip of your finger. And here's my little trick. In the moisture of sort of dried glue or a little bit of water off your brush, I just pick up the dry one with my finger, let it stick, and tap it on. It doesn't have to be super lined up. You can cut and trim after. And you'll see that, I don't know if you can see, but that one is not lined up. Now, while this is wet, I'm going to take my little boning tool, or you could take the back of your paintbrush. You could use sort of the back end, non-sharp side of your scissors. And we're just going to create some striated lines in here. Just texture it up. And I'll show you how that works closer up here. Nothing fancy, just super easy. This is why I'll quite often cut my petals a little bit larger, is so that I can glue and do the lines, and then I'll cut these down later. But these ones I cut pretty good to size. So you can see, just created a little texture in there. And then you set these aside to dry. Okay, so we have our petals, we have them colored and cut and textured. We have our leaves. Now we can construct. So we're going to take a wire, and they're quite long. So I quite often fold them 3/4 of the way down. And just pinch that together, or use your pliers. Again, every time I put my pliers on my little station, it's making my camera wobble. So I apologize for that. And just pinch that end. I'm having trouble today, guys. Must be because I'm on camera. You just pinch it closed. You can have a little loop in there. It just gives you a little catch-all. And then you're going to cover this in some floral tape. And this is all going to be hidden, so do this however you want, as messy as you want. And then cover your whole wire so that those two pieces that are bent stick down. Okay? So I have one already done here. And we're going to use that. So this project, we need very little glue. We're going to be using the tape more than anything. And the reason for that is because the tape and the coffee filter excess is going to help create this sort of bulging part that carnations have. And you can build this out a little bit more, because carnations quite often have this very specific bulge in their bloom bud. I don't know what it's called. So we're going to take, you should have 6 of these. You're going to take one, and I'm going to take just a little bit of glue. Again, not much at all, and I have to keep in mind that my brush is wet, so that's going to help thin out the glue. And I'm just going to add a little bit on the inside, and I'm going to fold this closed and press it down a little bit. So my glue is sort of just there, and I'm offsetting the petals in between so that they're not perfectly lined up. Just super random, fold in half. And then I'm going to add a little more glue, especially to the edges, and a little bit in the middle, and you want to go quite high up, probably about 3/4 from the bottom. You're going to take this, your stick, and you're going to start on one side. Again, where you have your glue, about 3/4 of the way up. You can go a little higher, but you want to avoid being able to see your stem in the middle here. So you can wrap it quite tight on the first and roll, and then start gathering, pinch, roll, gathering, pinch, roll, gather. And I say gather because you want to pull it up. Otherwise, you're going to end up with, you know, a roll around that's quite lower. So pull up, pinch with the glue, pull up, gather, pinch, roll. And that's going to be your center. And you can fluff it out a bit. But you want a super dense carnation center. And then you're going to take some floral tape and right up near the top of where that little loop is, so it seems like you're wasting a lot of the paper, and you want to keep that in mind when you're coloring your paper. If most of the color you see is going to be the tips. So if you want a two-tone like this, you're going to see mostly orange if your tips go any further than this, because we're using a lot of that paper to create that bulging bud area. And once you get down to the bottom of the paper, you just break off your floral tape, and that'll be the start of that little bulge area. Okay, so for the rest, the 5 other petals, we're going to leave them open. Just a little bit of glue on the inside. Again, you don't need a lot of glue because we're going to be taping in between. I forgot to show you guys that when you cut your petals, so when we had them in this shape, just snip off the little bit of the end here, and that's going to give you a hole. Okay, so if you haven't done that, then you just go in now and make a little hole. And right at the bottom of where that bulge that you're creating with the excess is where you're going to do the same thing. You're going to just use that little bit of glue, pinch, tuck, gather, pinch, tuck, gather, and you're going to gather all the way up. And then just roll it and pinch it just so it adheres, and move your petals around a little bit if you need to. Take more floral tape and do the same thing. Just remember that you want to go quite high with the floral tape. My tape is not long enough. Maybe start with a longer piece instead of smaller pieces. I don't know about you guys, but floral tape is the bane of my existence. It's beautiful stuff, but it is sticky and I find it fussy. Okay. And we're just going to repeat the process. With your center petals, you can get sneaky. Just a little bit of glue. You can get sneaky and put 2 together. Just make sure you offset the petals so that they're not completely lined up between the layers. So you can get sneaky into 2. They do look better when you do them one by one. I will tell you that. They have a better shape. So the whole point of the carnation shape is to go really shallow in the depth this way and bloom out. So that's why we're starting lower with the pinch and pinching upwards. And you can always slide your petals up if you need to a little bit. But my tip that I would have to give you guys is every once in a while, gather them up and see if your outer petals are level or fairly level to your inner petals. And when you pinch it and close it tight, they'll kind of splay out. But they're always sort of level. Sort of different than other flowers. Other flowers sort of bloom out and down or bloom out and up. Okay, so that was 2 petals at once. Get your floral tape on there. Just to the bottom of that bulging bud. That's what we're going to call it now. And if you want little carnations, you could stop here. If you want a super tight mini carnation bud, you can do it even tighter and higher. But we're going to do a full carnation today. And I'm going to just sneak these 2 together as well, because my whole thing is to show you the easy way. Now I do make carnations in the thicker paper as well. It's quite a bit of a different technique. Maybe I'll show you guys sometime. But these are my easy ones. Okay, so So when you get to your last ones, you want to kind of make sure that you're looking underneath. Make sure everything's sitting the way you want it to sit. Pull your petals a little bit if you need to. Pinch that glue activation down. And again, check, gather them all up and check that you're fairly level across the top to have that carnation style bloom. And on your very last one, even go tighter to the top if you can. And focus a little more time with your floral tape in layers. Give it extra layers just to build it out a bit. Okay. Guys, this is so easy. I really hope that you guys comment and send me links or photos on Instagram with Blooms by Mosaic. That's my handle, because I love seeing your work. I love it when you guys message me or tag me when you try these. And then you can just go in and play. Look how pretty that is, guys. I love the two-tone ones. Okay, so let's just finish it up by putting our little leaves on. These ones are the ones that we just did, so they're still a little bit wet. I'm going to use these ones. And I'm just going to cut them down a little bit because they're big. Always easier to cut them down later. And I'm just going to add just a little bit of glue to the bottoms of them. You want to make sure that that texture that you put into them is on the top and partway down your carnation stem. You're just going to glue and kind of wrap them around, almost like the stem is folding out of it. And you're just going to offset it a little bit with the other one. Pinch it down, and then you're just going to floral tape the whole thing. Oops. My hands are sticky. Guys, I'm so good at making a mess and getting sticky. It's ridiculous. And then you just floral tape the whole thing. If you want to add a little more thickness, you could add a little bit of paper to this. You could do a couple of layers of the floral tape, whatever you want. But because I quite often stick these, I snip them down and I stick them in just little gift tags, or I make little mini bouquets. I don't mind the thinner stems. And you want to let these dry before you play with them too much. But you can go back in after with your scissors or a pencil or anything like that, and you could curl and shape them a little bit. But there you go, guys. How pretty is that? So easy. I know you guys can do this. Those are my coffee filter carnations. I can't wait to see your guys' projects. Please like and subscribe. Tag me on social media. I'm looking forward to seeing what you do with this. Have a great day. Cheers.